At some point in the 1200s, roughly 10% of the entire human population was killed. Not by a plague, not by a natural disaster, by one man. And his really motivated army. His name was Genghis Khan, and depending on who you ask, he was either the greatest military commander who ever lived, or the single most destructive human being in recorded history, possibly both. This is his story, and it does not start well. The year is around 1162. The place is the Mongolian steppe, which is essentially a giant cold field that goes on forever and no one wants to live in, except the Mongols, who had no choice. Temujin, that was his name before the whole Khan thing, was born into the Borjigin clan. His father, Yasuge, was a minor tribal chief, not powerful, not rich, just slightly less miserable than everyone else. When Temujin was around 9 years old, his father took him to find a bride from a neighboring tribe. Because that was normal then. They found a girl named Borte. Everyone agreed on the arrangement, and Yasuge left his son there as a gesture of goodwill. On the ride home, Yasuge stopped to share a meal with a group of Tatars, a rival tribe. They poisoned him. Temujin returned home to find his family leaderless. The clan, deciding they had no use for a widow and her children, abandoned them on the steppe to die. His mother, Holun, kept them alive by foraging for roots and berries. Temujin, now a child responsible for his family's survival, did what he had to do. At one point, he killed his own half-brother over a fish. He was around 10 years old. Shortly after, a rival clan captured Temujin and enslaved him with a wooden collar around his neck. He eventually escaped and began the slow, methodical process of making everyone who had ever wronged him deeply regret it. The Mongolian steppe in the 1100s was essentially a giant game of tribal politics, blood feuds, and who could steal whose horses fastest. Every clan was at war with every other clan. Alliances changed constantly, and loyalty was basically a suggestion. Temujin was about to become very good at this game. He started by rescuing Borte, who had been kidnapped by a rival tribe shortly after they married, because of course she had. He formed an alliance with his blood brother Jamuka and his father's old friend Togrul, Khan of the Karit tribe. Together they launched a rescue. It worked. Borte came home. The alliance, however, did not last. Jamuka and Temujin split. Disagreements over leadership style, power, and the classic issue of one of us is probably going to have to destroy the other eventually. Over the next 2 decades, Temujin united the fractured Mongol tribes under a single banner, not just through war, but through a system. Loyalty was rewarded regardless of which tribe you came from. Rank was earned through merit, not bloodline. Looting was organized and shared. Basically, he turned a collection of feuding nomads into the most efficient fighting force the world had ever seen. In 1206, at a great assembly called the Kurultai, the United Tribes gave him a new name, Genghis Khan. Universal ruler, he was around 44 years old. He was just getting started. Now, here is where things get complicated. Genghis Khan did not conquer the way most rulers did. He didn't want to occupy cities. He wanted submission. His terms were simple. Surrender. Pay tribute and you'll be fine. Resist and you won't be fine. China was first. The Xi-Xia and Jin dynasties, both of which assumed their massive walls and armies would be enough, discovered they were not. The Mongols had learned siege warfare. The walls did not help. Central Asia came next. The Khwarezmian Empire one of the most powerful in the Islamic world, made the catastrophic mistake of killing Genghis Khan's trade delegation. He did not take this well. What followed was one of the most complete destructions of a civilization in human history. The cities of Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv, and Nishapur, thriving centers of trade, culture, and learning, were reduced to rubble. Merv alone is estimated to have lost over 1 million people. The skull pyramids the Mongols left outside city walls were not random cruelty. They were a message, a very effective one. After Merv, most cities surrendered without a fight. By the time Genghis Khan died in 1227, cause of death still debated. Possibly a fall from a horse. The Mongol Empire covered 24 million square kilometers. That's more than any empire in history, and his sons weren't done yet. Here's the part that tends to surprise people. Genghis Khan, the man personally responsible for tens of millions of deaths, was, by the standards of his time, remarkably progressive in certain ways. He established one of the world's first international postal systems. He created a law code called the Yasa. He granted religious freedom across his empire at a time when Europe was executing people for heresy. He promoted based on skill. He protected trade routes. He welcomed engineers, doctors, and scholars from conquered territories into his court. The period following the conquests, known as the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, saw unprecedented trade and cultural exchange across Eurasia. Goods, ideas, and disease moved faster than ever before. That last one becomes important later. The trade routes the Mongols secured are believed by many historians to have accelerated the spread of the Black Death. So, a complicated legacy. Genghis Khan died in August 1227. His tomb has never been found. According to tradition, he requested a secret burial. The soldiers who buried him were killed. The soldiers who killed them were killed. The land was reportedly trampled by horses for years to erase any trace. He took the location to his grave, literally. His empire eventually fragmented, but what he left behind is almost impossible to overstate. 40 million people are estimated to have died as a result of the Mongol conquests, roughly 10% of the entire world's population at the time. Some regions in Central Asia lost up to 90% of their population. It took some areas centuries to recover. At the same time, genetic studies suggest that around 1 in 200 men alive today carry a Y chromosome lineage linked to Genghis Khan, which is somehow both impressive and deeply unsettling. So, who was Genghis Khan? A boy abandoned on a steppe who refused to die. A military genius who unified a continent. A man whose empire enabled centuries of trade and cultural exchange, and whose conquests caused one of the greatest losses of human life in history. He was all of it, whether that makes him great or monstrous, or something the history books haven't found the right word for yet. Well, that's above our pay grade. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you want more videos like this, subscribe and leave a comment with who you think we should cover next. We have a long list. History is very weird.